Alright, so my little heathen sidekick over here does not appreciate this video thing, doesn't understand what the point of talking by this window is. She's getting a little wild and was attacking the blanket and the cat hair on the blanket, so yeah, she really wants to go over to my house, and we haven't done that yet. It is 3:15, so she'll get there, but she's gonna have to wait a little bit. I'm just not happy about that. So I've been kind of thinking this week, especially yesterday, it's like, okay, so after I did the video yesterday, and I was like, what would it be like if I just stopped talking about all the negative shit all the time? That's like completely new for me anyway, because it's like always, I guess that's always been amplified in my life because of that was my perception. That's what, you know, my inclination has been to always, that's a shadow side of Cancer too, so it's the pessimism, and then of course being in a family that's very pessimistic as well. I think it's probably just amplified on that end. But then I was thinking about it yesterday. It's like, so what if I just don't talk about some of that stuff anymore? It's like, but then what would I talk about? It's like, I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know what I would do. And I had this kind of little, I guess it's not really weird, but a derby friend, okay, so she was around, here, I'm going to do it again. She was around when the other friend, she was the third person in the conversation, came at me about, you know, she was trying to complain about her husband not doing enough to participate, and then was like, oh, I know that this also seems like, you know, what you're doing, but, you know, that doesn't affect this, or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, she was comparing her husband's situation to my situation, and ended up bringing me into her junk, which I've talked about as I'm pretty confident that the whole reason that even came up at all was she was essentially, you know, looking to basically a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? She had said many times that she can't maintain friendships as an adult, right? And she wants to blame it on her neurodivergence or whatever else. And I think the biggest thing on that connection was the fact that I kept showing up, and I was going up to Kokomo, which was like an hour and 45-minute drive from me, to hang out with her, right? And we went skating like 2 or 3 times, and at least one time I went up there and we did the I painted my elephant, right? So it's like, since I kept showing up, it's like she had to find something to come at me about to confirm that she can't have grown-up friendships. And I was the one that kept showing up. So therefore, I was the problem with maintaining her illusion, right? So, yeah, so obviously we're not friends now. Man, it was just one of those things. It's like, that wasn't going to stop happening. It's like I was the one that was continuously showing up to contradict this belief that she had, where she couldn't have adult friendships. You know, I was the one that kept going up there to visit her, and so if I would have, I think, tried to clear it up beyond that anyway, I think it would have been something else a little bit later on. There would have been other things that she would have basically brought into the dynamic to prove her point that she couldn't have adult friends, right? So anyway, when I was clearing out, even before I was clearing anything out, she did have to get cleared out of Instagram separately. But like Facebook, that was really quick. It's like once I I realized that it's like in that interaction, I apologized. She apologized first for saying the thing, and I apologized for coming back as quickly and as harsh as I did. But then it's like, I didn't owe her an apology for that, because that was what she was looking for. She wanted that confirmation that she couldn't have the friendship. So it was like just trying to be nice and to maintain a friendship with somebody that's looking for an excuse to not have the friendship. It's like it's always going to go. There's no scenario in which somebody so set on believing that she can't have friendships is going to, just be good about having a friendship. She's not just going to accept it. She's already convinced herself over and tried to convince me over and over again that she can't have these friendships. So since I'm the one that keeps showing up, then obviously I'm the problem to her illusion. So, that scenario is just, it's basically a battle I couldn't win on that end, right? So it's like, all right, so she doesn't want to have the friend, or she doesn't want to have me as a friend. Fine, we'll go our separate ways and all that fun stuff. And so I booted her off my my stuff, and then later went around and was deleting a bunch of other derby people that I maybe had been friendly acquaintances with casually or whatever, maybe not so much. There were a few that kind of got on my nerves, like, the one the one girl where I tagged my brother in a post. It was a really stupid post. Like, the point of the post was, it was a joke, right? It's talking about if the population of penguins in Antarctica wanted to invade Ireland, how many people how many people Ireland has, they have to fend off X amount of penguins per person. And so it's like something completely stupid, right? And I posted it and tagged my brother in it because it made me laugh. And, there's one girl that comes back with, that math isn't mathing right or something. It's like, dude, take a joke. If you can't take a joke, you don't need to be here. Right? So, me and my brother like laughing over dumb shit. So if you can't appreciate that, then you will not be trying to ruin our fun. So off with you, right? And then another one that his biggest thing was, I think he just liked to be, well, as the one derby friend once stated it, he just likes to be obtuse. So it's like, y'all can just go, right? So there were a bunch of people that I cleared out on my friends list, including the one that I, obviously was a closer friend, because she was in the group chat with me and that other girl, who was essentially my best friend for a while. Anyway, whole point of that, she came back today and sent me a message. I had deleted her off back around the same time frame, and the biggest reason there was, she's 3 months older than my mom's youngest sister, which isn't a problem, but she had the tendency to do like my family did, and like I've had the tendency in my lifetime to do, it's always reverting to the negative stuff. Just like, okay, so maybe I don't want to focus on that so much. Maybe I want to try to be more optimistic and, don't want her just bringing down the sadness on everything too, because I can do that well enough on my own. So I booted her as well. So today she added me back. Well, I don't know if she added me back on Facebook today or what happened on that end, but she did add me back on Facebook and sent me a couple messages on Messenger. What was the point of, like, I don't even remember exactly what the big point of the conversation was, and it could entirely be just to have somebody to pull back into the negative stuff. I don't know. Anyway, she reached out to me, sent me 2 messages, including one where she mentioned that my hair was cute or whatever. It's like, okay, thanks. But I don't know what the first one was. Oh, yes, I do. It was a derby thing. So somebody had mentioned that a player named Mystic was coming back and said she knew her, and she was wanting to know if it was me, because my name for derby was Mystic Storm. So it is not me, but she was asking if I was coming back, because apparently she's been on a leave of absence to deal with some stuff with her mom as well. So yeah, but we have this little conversation today, and I mean, it wasn't bad, or just kind of catching up a little bit. She said her mom's had some issues and is not able to live at home anymore, so she's living in some kind of facility, and she had to move out of her apartment on short notice, and ended up moving into her mom's old house since it's currently empty and waiting to be sold. So while she looks for another place, and I kind of gave her the rough overview about what was going on my end, and that I was looking at possibly relocating to Oklahoma for a little bit to stay with my brother and his wife and daughter, rather than the family situation. And I think mainly the extent of what I really told her on the family end was, yes, the strokes with my dad, and the first fall with my mom, and then the stroke more recently with my dad, and then the more recent fall with my mom, and like all these things. And and there was like one point where I was thinking about adding something else, and it's like, nah, I just don't want to. And then I was thinking about it, kind of like I was thinking on here. It's like, okay, so if I stop thinking about the past, what am I talking about, right? What 12 wasn't talking about this point. It's like, what does that leave? Well, like, what if I'm not always just focusing on what happened? Then where does that put me? Where am I going from there? So it's like this whole just, I don't know. When I was walking back over to my aunt's house a little bit ago, I'm going to show you this adorable little sploot. Yeah. She's like, we could go be over there with my friends and I could be running in the yard, but here you are talking to your phone again. But yeah, when I was walking over here, and I was kind of thinking about that, because I knew I wanted to do a video, because I'm really close to that 300. This will be 289. So I'm really close to 300, and I want to get there. Obviously it's going to happen before the 2-year anniversary of the thing. But also maybe ideally before, my computer is less easy to use because they stop offering security updates or whatever and all that fun stuff. So I'm limited on how much time I have with that, but also, before I can get a new computer as well. So I figured if nothing else, I want to get my 300 in before then, right? Which that'll be easy. And I have a couple more days before my aunt and uncle are going to be back in town to take over on the heathen bean, so I do not have to contend with this anymore. She's a good little dog, very sweet, very much loves being around other dogs, but also very much an only child. And like when I feed them, like dinner time is good because, I just give her food at the same time I give the oldest one her food, because she doesn't know that everybody has to wait their turn. Even though they're following me and not waiting very patiently by any means, they still know they're not allowed to touch the other dog's bowls. She doesn't know that, so she will try to take over if you're not paying attention. So I just set her bowl down over by the oldest one and get her busy so she's sidetracked with her own food and not worrying about when hers is coming or whatever. So yeah, but then snacks. my dad's always giving snacks, and like lots of snacks. We have some very obese dogs. Ziva would benefit from us not living there. However, we're still there right now, so that's not an option, but I would appreciate cutting her back on the snacks as well. She wouldn't appreciate that, but yeah, so anyway, this one does, I think she's mainly just being loud, but she's kind of lunged at Taz a few times, which, okay, this is like the smallest dog in the bunch trying to take on the biggest dog in the bunch, who I think she also knows he's the most inclined to want to play, but she hasn't figured out how to get him to play yet. So, and he, you know, he likes tug and stuff like that, so I mean, that's not even a game with them. I've tried to get them to play tug, and he's just like, and she can't do anything with it. Anyway, so I have today, tomorrow, and then the next day. They'll be back at, like, I think they're supposed to land around 7 on Saturday. So I'll be able to do a video that day if I want to. And I'll probably want to, because it's a lot nicer sitting in this space with the AC rather than in my car down the road and having to deal with bugs or the hot or whatever else, right? Anyway, as I was walking over here today, I was thinking about just this point of, okay, so what am I talking about, right? And I feel like I'm kind of entering a new level of just surrendering to what is and where I'm at, and not just wanting to, I guess, be at war with that space. It's like, I'm here, and unless I'm like winning the lottery anytime soon and just, you know, being able to up and vanish, you know, which obviously is not where I'm at right this second, you know, I'm stuck, right? So I can be stuck and focused on all the negative, or I can just accept that this is where I'm at and try to figure out how to move forward going forward, right? So I guess that's what I'm doing. But, you know, it's like, obviously I don't want to just sit here and like talk about like future stuff all the time, because then that's kind of the other extreme. And I kind of feel like a lot of what's going on is like, I feel like I can tap into other timelines of being, and I like them very much. But it's also kind of frustrating because that's not exactly where I am right this second. So it's like, okay, so I can see these, you know, these timelines where I'm living this other life and I have these other people in my life. But I mean, you don't get to just like check out of this timeline and go to that one immediately. There's like things that have to, you know, fall apart and come back together differently to make that be able to happen, right? So it's like, just focusing on all these other timelines, that doesn't really work either, right? So then what? What am I doing? And I feel like that's just kind of part of the surrendering thing, is this is where I'm at. I don't want to focus on all the negative, and God knows I don't want any more of these damn, like, shitstorms to happen. So I also would like to invite better things to be able to happen, right? But if I'm only ever focused on the negative, then that's not ever going to allow for better things to come in. You know, and today I had to drive my parents up to the heart hospital, which apparently my mom missed her appointment. She said they both had an appointment and it was at 11:30. Hers was apparently at 11:15. But since we left the house to get there at 11:30, she ended up missing her appointment. And because the doctor had a procedure at noon, she wasn't able to get in, so she got to go back next week. But, you know, so we're driving up there today, and it's fine, no big deal. Um, on the way back, she said, "Thanks for driving," or something. I was like, okay, whatever, yeah. It's like, not like, the thought in my head was not like I really had an option. And it's like, is that kind of feeding in on this surrendering to what is part? Because what is they can't currently drive themselves anywhere, and I'm still here, so obviously I am doing that part. But, it's like, it wasn't a problem to do it or anything. And today, luckily, they were both in a much better mood. But it was like, so is this part of that surrendering piece? Because I'm, no, I didn't really have an option, if you want to look at it that way. But at the same time, it's like, what else was I doing anyway? So, I've just been thinking a whole lot about this surrendering aspect of things. It's like, I mean, I don't know. That's the best I got right now, I guess. Spent a lot of time kind of thinking through the writing endeavor, because I think that's a big part of getting me further lined up with the timelines I want to be on. Because, well, like my posters that I set up for myself, that I didn't realize were combined all to share a message as well, because they're each their own message, right? But then I looked at them together and I was like, it's like, right, the universe provides, trust the process. And right, so that day, the one day when I looked at them all together, then it's like, oh, it's like they were all their own messages. But then the way I had them arranged on the hutch of my desk, it's like, it's like it was just meant to tell me that message altogether, the extended version of the things. But yeah, that's like one of the biggest things I think is really coming to appreciate how many times that I've said I don't know what I'm doing, and yet I just started doing something and it ended up being what I was supposed to be doing. So it's like there's that level where it's like I've always known what I was supposed to be doing. Like part of the writing bit, like one of the things that I've been so afraid of was like, the stuff where I start challenging some of, like what I got from religion versus, how it was actually a block for me connecting with the universe in any kind of way, right? Because it's like religion, with all its rules and regulations and everything, is actually set up just to block you from accessing, higher ways of being, higher levels of who you already are. It just basically more essential to keeping you locked in the illusion, right? The illusion that you have to have somebody outside of yourself to save you, or, that you're not already worthy just because you exist, right? Because the church doesn't want you to believe that, because then the church has no control if they don't get you to accept and believe that, you're shit. If you just accept that you're shit, then you're not going to strive to access the higher levels of being that you already are, right? At some other space and some other timeline, you're already there, right? So it's like one of the things that I've always been kind of struggling with on the using my voice end of things was I always felt like that was a big part of what I was here to do, was challenge the religious conditioning end of things, which, for the little kid in high school that I was, having this sort of insight into that was exactly one of those things that caused me to block myself from leaning into that, right? And actually, because I was trying to block myself from believing that this was a task that not only was I supposed to do, but that I was actually kind of made to do. I was leaning very hard into trusting the conditioning because it's got to be right, because they're like trying to beat it into my head, right? And that is not that is not proven out at all. However, the challenges of seeing the things that I did because I was convinced of the necessity of being locked into the illusion, essentially, right? Because you start challenging your own views on things, and it gets really wobbly really quick, right? So, I was trying to be the good church girl and all that crap, and then to also admit that there was this part of me that didn't believe that at all. That was terrifying. So, a lot of my aversion to doing the thing that essentially I'm coming back to now was because that fear of, not feeling like I was able to handle the thing, right? So, I've talked about when I started the YouTube channel and I got my first 3 subscribers, and I cried because what if I couldn't do what I set out to do, right? And it's like, I didn't know what I was trying to do at that time, right? It didn't really have a full sense of what I was doing or where I was going or what this thing was supposed to look like. So then I just started talking, and then, it became this thing where I was essentially telling the old stories, but as a means of getting them out of my system, right? And there's some things that I've been able to deal with like once or twice and then walk away from them and not be completely weighed down by them, I guess. Like there was one that was probably about 1.5 years ago. I got this book from the library on Stoicism, and I don't remember there's either the 3rd or 4th philosopher in the book, like the purpose of what he was doing I think they called him the challenger. It was like the whole purpose of him doing what he was there to do was to challenge some of the viewpoints that already in existence or that we're trying to develop or whatever. And I just remember I had this really strong sense of panic, and what if I'm not smart enough to do this, or what if I'm incapable of doing this? It's like, okay, going back to the astrology bit, I am quite confident that part of the reason that the church has demonized astrology and numerology and like all these different things is because you can in fact know what you're here to do and all that stuff, right? So it's like the more that I've tuned into like some of these things, it's like, oh, so that actually makes sense. This is literally telling me exactly what I'm here to do. And so, of course, they don't want you to have that sense. And then that's like, even that is ultimately, I mean, at the end of the day, we and they are the same. And, it's just one side, basically whichever side you're operating from in the we state of being, the opposite of that, whatever you deem to be the opposite, and the they is essentially just the shadow, right? The shadow side. So however that looks to play out from the space you're operating from, right? So, even all the things with trying to, going back to the idea of othering people, right? So if you are operating in a space of trying to other somebody for any reason, that's also kind of is it operating from your own shadow? Kind of. To avoid or to act like you don't also have those qualities that you are essentially demonizing from the other side. That's kind of just operating from the space of illusion, right? So, like, we all have all of the things: good, bad, light, dark, masculine, feminine, however you want to look at it. It's like we all have all of that within us, right? So it's like, I think the biggest part of my journey has been to, okay, going back to the yin yang, because yeah, I realized early on in this whole YouTube thing that I had kind of done that in the sense of, like, with Tyler. Like, I had him on a pedestal, and, like, I feel like most of us in the drumline group had him on a pedestal, right? Because he was a great leader, and we saw all these good things in him, but, like, for me, like, I always overly identified, I guess, with the dark part of myself, right? And, so when I've talked about how I was afraid to reconnect with him, even though I felt many times like I was supposed to reach out and check on him and see how he was doing. It's like I never felt like I could, because I was always afraid that my sadness would ooze into his life and, contaminate his life. And I thought he was living his dream. So I didn't want to do that, right? And it ended up being essentially a block on the connection, whereas, then he ends up dying at 34. Now, what if I would have actually reached out at any other point along the way, and, potentially just our friendship could have been enough of a connection to make him make slightly different decisions that, didn't end up leading down the path that ended up with his death at 34. But I was so focused on my own sadness and, my own darkness that I couldn't take that chance. I was afraid that my sadness would ooze into his life and bring him down. But it did not cross my mind that maybe he also needed somebody, just that sense of connection, the sense that somebody else was out there that actually gave a shit, right? And I've talked about, like, so the first time I went to see him, he was in a coma. And then the second time that I went to see him, one of my good friends, good friends from back then, she and I were the only two girls in the group that had been there, like, from the first season, the drumline group. And so we were kind of extra tight because of that, because we were the only ones there the entire time. But then, when she came up from Texas and said she wanted to go visit him, but she didn't want to go by herself, and would I go with her? It's like, yes, because I wanted to go back, and I didn't want to go with my mom, but I didn't know how to get there. I wasn't confident enough in myself to go there by myself anyway. So I was relieved that this opportunity came up, right? So yeah, we went and visited him, and at that point, he was awake and coherent, and, we had a good conversation, and he said he was really surprised at all the people that had showed up. And he was talking about the one girl that had joined us for, I don't think she was there junior year, I think she was just there senior year. She was not one of my favorite people. She was the one that was trying to tell everybody, and, like, this is a freshman or sophomore year, she was telling everybody that she had cancer and, like, less than a year to live. And, our one mutual friend bought every word she said, and I was just like, that's not right. And, of course, it ended up not being right, but, we were never, I could never be friends with her after that. It's like, we were we could get along for drumline stuff, but other than that, it's like, you're not somebody I want to try to connect with. Yeah, you've already proven yourself that you like to lie to people, so yeah, no, that's not what I'm interested in, right? So, right, but he said that she had even come out to see him, and he was really surprised by that, and just the conversation was like, why? Everybody loved you. But just the fact that he seemed so oblivious that some of the people actually gave a shit and showed up. And, I remember when the whole thing came up when he was in a coma, and I don't remember who told me, but I remember it's like I shifted into this mode of making sure everybody in our group knew in case they wanted to, check in with him or whatever. And I just remember feeling, it's like, I don't feel like anybody would do this for me. It's like, I don't think anybody would really give a shit if I just wasn't there anymore, or if something happened and, but like that was the biggest thing. It's like, I'm not okay with taking any chance that somebody doesn't know that would want to know, right? So, and then he ended up being surprised that a bunch of them bothered showing up at all. But yeah, it's just kind of a weird space. I think that was kind of a sad point. But that was the point. Being in that space of not feeling like anybody would give a shit to make sure everybody else knew about me if something had happened, right? And it's like, that's unfortunate. It's like, then it's like, what? I don't know. I don't know. That just hit me some kind of way just then when I was talking through it. But I remember that was exactly the sense that I had. And like, there were, I think some would definitely give a shit, but not most of them. And, I'm not going to say that's not necessarily with good reason. Although I don't think all of them really had a good reason. I think a lot of them just, like, okay, so I've talked about the group of 5 guys, right? Okay, so my knowings. Senior year in high school, I had the three knowings. There was, the first was that Tyler was going to be, or we were going to be in our mid-30s when Tyler died, and the group would come back together for a brief time. The next was that I would be 40 before things started to come together and make sense for me. And then the other was the group of 5 guys that that essentially I'm here to change the world with, right? And like the I'm going back to that one now because when I had this knowing back then, the only group that I could connect it to was, the band that they were in, right? So the guy I was dating in high school and early undergrad was in a band, Good Christian Boys, and that was the best I could make sense of, this group that I kept seeing it just seemed like we were out to change the world together, but I didn't know anything beyond that. So the group that I had at the time that I was connecting it to was, that band. And it's like, but that never made sense because, okay, so, it's just like, what are we doing? Can we go now? Because, okay, the sense was that, I was going to be pretty close with all of those guys. And like the biggest thing that was in contrast to that for the group that I kept seeing was Brandon and I just really didn't care about each other. I mean, we didn't want anything bad to happen to each other, but we weren't trying to be friends or anything. It was just, we had mutual friends. So like that was the only connection. But then like Steve hated me. Like he always hated me. He would act otherwise, especially since I was, dating the guy that was a good friend of his in that time frame. And then, like in the later years, once me and that guy broke up, we've talked like once or twice since then, and that's it, right? And not a good friendly conversation either, which is very short and this is awkward and moving on, that kind of a thing, right? But then Tyler died, so obviously it can't be that group because not all the pieces are there, and then Paul was the other one, and he moved to, I think, Colorado, and he's got his own life out there, but and we send each other the happy birthday messages on our birthdays because we share a birthday. So that was always the big connecting piece there, like even beyond anything else. It's like we shared a birthday, but he was a year younger than me. So, but we were in the same class because I flunked preschool, okay? Because I wouldn't talk to anybody. So, but yeah, it was one of those things when, when my parents were trying to figure out what to do with me school-wise, I apparently went in for testing with the principal, and like the conversation that the principal had with my mom and dad afterwards. He said she's where she needs to be as far as, doing the things and all that fun stuff, but a little on the shy side. And he said either I could be the oldest in the class or one of the youngest of the next class, or of the other class. So it's like, which way do you want to go? And apparently I walked over and like hid behind my mom at that point in time, and they decided, yeah, let's give her another year. Which worked out because, the drumline stuff doesn't happen had I not flunked preschool. So, and I was very much meant to be there to learn a lot of these things that I did learn from that. But like, okay, going back to the Tyler piece, like I've called him my drumline counterpart for a long time, because, we're the leaders. So it just kind of made sense, and we were kind of opposites in a lot of ways, on that end, or I guess the polarity end of things, if you will, because he was the dude that was the captain of the battery. I was the chick that was the captain of the pit. So, but then like that light and dark thing and all that stuff, right? So I think that's really like the yin yang. I talked about the earrings that I got in 7th grade, and I would just like stare at the symbol. It's like, there's something here that I'm missing that I just cannot. It's like there's something in the symbol that is supposed to make much more sense than it does, but I was just always drawn to the symbol, right? So I like had these earrings that I absolutely loved, but then like once I made the connection, or once I started, I guess, really making sense of the drumline counterpart end of things, and I started talking about being afraid of my sadness oozing into Tyler's life, right? So then to look at the symbol, it's like, there is the light in the dark, there is the dark in the light. It's like we all have aspects of both. We don't get to escape any of that. And I think that, that's essentially an important part of the mirror, right? So whatever else is going on, whatever we're putting out in the world is getting reflected back to us at some level. Shadow and light both. Where I was always focused on the shadow side of myself and thinking that everything that I was, my whole existence was somehow wrong and flawed, because of what I was picking up with the conditioning and everything. It's like, so, like trying to make sense of, I wanted to say it was probably, I don't know if he was still in the coma or if it was after he died, but I started writing letters to Tyler. And I think the biggest thing was, death, probably the most important part of that, because I got to a point where I just looked at the situation and was like, whatever's on the other side of death, he already knows anything that I would have tried to deny or hide otherwise. So it gave me space to start thinking through things that I wouldn't have told him if we were talking about it in real life. You know, like the stuff with my cousin from when I was little, right? So, and, you know, the bullying side of things, and you know, how much of that I just carried because I didn't think anybody cared. Was a big part of it, because I didn't want to let my sadness ooze into somebody else's life, so I just buried it, right? But then to look at his side of things, it seems like the big thing on his end was, you know, he got into drinking early, and that was always a thing that he did, and everybody kind of knew that he was into drinking, but everybody looked up to him for everything else, and I think we just kind of overlooked anything where maybe he didn't need to be on the pedestal so much as just needed a friend in the same space, but everybody had him on the pedestal anyway, so, you know, we kind of felt like he was above us in some kind of way, and so, you know, we weren't going to say anything about the things that could potentially be a problem. So was that the thing that got him to that point? I think it was a big part of it. But then, you know, what was the underlying thing driving him to do all the drinking, right? And don't eat the blanket. But it's like any kind of addiction. It's like, what is the underlying thing that gets somebody there, right? I can say I'm a big time stress eater, and that has not gone in my favor many times. But it's like, you know, like the family stuff, right? So we get into this space where we have to be somehow something other than who we are and who we're here to be around our family, right? Because that was my family, right? I was the scapegoat. I was the problem child. I was the one that was, I guess, too honest in the space of witnessing the illusion and acknowledging that people were operating from the wound, right? So if they're, you know, like my grandfather, you know, he was so dead set on everybody thinking that he had this big happy family, but then like the means of getting people there were, you know, bully you into submission. So then everybody's always dialing back on how much or how true to themselves they're really able to be, because they have to operate under the illusion, right? Because love is conditioned, and because if you fall out of line with the illusion, then you're not lovable, right? And it's like, I could take that. I handled that. It was a very lonely and sad place, but for me, it was more of an issue to see through the illusion and try to deny that it wasn't a fucking illusion. If you can see through it and you can see that it's just a matter of time before it crumbles, why wouldn't you call attention to it, right? But, you know, he wanted the illusion of the big happy family. He didn't want the big happy family. He wanted the illusion of it. He just wanted other people to believe that that's what he had. And everybody else fell into line and, you know, did what they were supposed to keep his illusion alive. Except me. So, thus you get scapegoated. It's kind of a weird space to be right now, because it's like even, it's like it doesn't change what happened. Like the whole trying to surrender to what is. I mean, because it's essentially what you got to do in order for anything to really change. You have to be able to see what is and accept what is, especially yourself. Figure out how to love yourself regardless of, good, bad, ugly, whatever. All the things. You got to come to terms with all aspects of yourself. And so a lot of people just don't want to own up to the shadow part, right? So, yeah. I don't know. Okay, where am I at? My phone is at 22%, which is still, I don't know. Just trying to figure out if I want to ramble through anything else, or if that covers what I'm thinking today, because I feel like it kind of is, even then, like this video with trying not to be locked in on, I guess, the pessimism side of things, the not reverting back to the really bad things that have been going on lately, and being more surrendered to the fact that, yeah, some of that shit's still going on, but also, I mean, I don't want to draw more of that in anyway. So, yeah. But it's like they're still talking about some past stuff too. So it's like, what's there to talk about otherwise? This is the I guess the question. If I'm not, because that's a big part of storytelling, right? Stuff that did happen, or, I mean, that's I guess my approach to it from the standpoint of this dog just went out under the bed at the side apparently and just randomly walks out underneath it at the side. I didn't know she was down there. I knew she was back there. But anyway, like that's storytelling, right? So I like being able to hear other people's stories, and okay, well, I'm not in that space yet. Probably why I watch as many videos as I do. But still, it's like, okay, so storytelling, I feel like that's got to be authentic to me then, right? So how is it going to be authentic if it's not something you actually went through? But then, anyway, this is the confusion of the thing that I guess basically this whole video is about. And also how to do it, not do it, and also, I don't know, whatever, I don't know. Yeah. So on that note, I'm going to wrap it up because I don't know what else to say at this point. And I know I have some hungry dogs. And this one is very bored and wants to go hang out with her friends. So we'll go do that. Oh, I did watch a movie last night that I ended up liking a lot more than I thought I would. It was Boogeyman. And don't ask me to name any of the people that were in it, because there's one guy that, he was like, he had a very short-lived role in the movie, that I recognize his face, but I don't remember his name. It's like, I know I've seen him in other things, and I want to say generally scary movies, but the movie was Boogeyman. And I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. And I think part of it, I feel like, is one of those where I guess the people feel more real, right? It's like the characters and like the stuff that they're going through in the movie. It's like, it just seems like a more realistic thing. Whereas, I mean, look, I'm sure it might have been more of a big thing to work at the summer camps and all that shit, but I don't know, like the Friday the 13th, that's what it was, right? It's like, when I watched, I think the first one, and the girl's like on her way to the summer camp or whatever because she's starting her job or whatever, and like she stops in the little to a restaurant or whatever it was, and all the townspeople are like talking about, why would you want to go out there and blah blah blah, and then somebody forces a truck driver to give her a ride to the camp, and he's like shoving her by the ass up into the truck and all this stuff. It's like, it's just so icky. It's the big one. That one, like, just watching is like, what the fuck? And honestly, like, that for being in, what was it, in the 80s or whatever, that movie honestly gave me more of the sense of, okay, going back to that penetration thing, right? Whatever you are watching, right? So whatever you are allowing to penetrate your ear holes and your eyeballs is essentially what you end up creating more of in the world around you, right? Because you're seeing this thing, so then you kind of at that level, it's once it hits your brain and it has the space to percolate and become this other thing, right? So then I guess with the start of that movie feels to me like reinforcing the conditioning around, like what, I mean, I don't see how anybody could see those interactions and say, oh yeah, this is a completely normal interaction. But at the same time, the fact that okay, I'm going to stick with women and girls, but I know there are many boys and men that have had similar issues with people getting all handsy and touchy and when they shouldn't, right? But I feel like part of that, culturally speaking, with the time frame and all that, I mean, in part that was part of the conditioning anyway, the idea that this is completely normal, right? And everybody's had some experience of somebody getting too handsy and touching them when they shouldn't, but I feel like seeing that kind of stuff, and I feel like with the movie, I mean, as as dramatic and ridiculous as it was, should maybe have been one of those things of, this is not acceptable. But at the same time, it was still something that was happening because of this whole idea, going back to my loathing of patriarchal religions and, how they have, like, the whole purpose of them is to demonize the feminine and to try to make her less than and subservient and all these things, right? So it becomes okay to do whatever the fuck the toxic, icky men want to do to the girls that and the women that they had. If they had any self-respect or anything, they wouldn't tolerate those types of being around them, right? So so they rely on us being so beaten down that they can get away with doing the stuff that they should not ever be doing, just because they feel like they're somehow above and better than, and thus have some kind of right? So like this whole male loneliness epidemic or whatever, it's like, they want to blame feminism, but it's like, no, but like feminism ultimately just brought in access to some of the things we were blocked from before, right? So like even going back to like the situation with my ex, when I had my my retirement account, right? And I I had this retirement company or account with this company that I had worked for since I got out of undergrad. It was like a few months after I graduated in 2006. I got this job working with Community Health Network in mental health and her behavioral care or whatever. And 2006, I was connected to no one, right? Was not married. That was the year that I met the guy that I thought I was going to marry, but obviously that didn't end up happening, right? But then when I was with the one that I did marry that I shouldn't have, I had to have him co-sign to take this money out of this account for our joint move to Alabama. I could not do it without his permission, even though I had it for at least 6 years before he came into my sphere of existence, right? But because I then got married, he had to sign for it too. It's like, that's fucked up. He didn't have anything to do with that retirement account other than helping me spend it. And you know what? He was not good on spending. I mean, he pissed everything away, but he was always telling everybody that I was out for his money. And yet I'm the one with student loans still accruing interest for stuff that happened while we were together. I didn't fight for any of his retirement or anything because I just wanted to be done with his ass. And I was not interested in proving his story where I was only ever out for his money. Instead, I let myself get fucked over so I could be done with him sooner. And, in thinking about that many times afterwards, it's like, it probably would have been better to push that because, at least this fucking interest on this damn student loan, right? But yeah, he's not going to have to deal with any of that. He just gets off scot-free because I didn't want to fight. I wanted to be done with him. And even then, the only reason he went through with not forcing me to go to court about it was because I told his mom if she could get him to sign the paperwork within 4 business days, then I would take what I left with, and that was it. I didn't want anything else. That is the only reason he was motivated to sign, because otherwise he absolutely would have wanted me to have to spend all the money to go back and forth all the time for court and all that bullshit. So it's like, yeah. So I got fucked over in that, right? So like the whole feminism things, it's like to give rights where there weren't rights previously, right? So like had my grandma, maybe she realized, maybe there's an existence where she realized that my grandfather was kind of a garbage human being as far as, ability to tend to emotional needs otherwise or anything like that. I still see her as the first line of complacency, and that allowed him to behave badly, but maybe the reason she was in that situation as long as she was because maybe at some level she felt stuck because there wasn't this option of, back then you can't just get your own bank account or credit card without your husband's permission, all that kind of bullshit, right? So this is a big part of where I'm supposed to focus more energy and work on these things. but like still, like there's that whole like the whole political system currently in place in the physical existence that is trying to force us to go back, back to the dark ages and, lose rights and all this stuff. It's like, that's bullshit, that anybody would be so stuck to be that stuck and feel like they don't have any other way. Excuse me, which is, again, why I'm here at this point in time and why I've gone through the things that I have and am getting increasingly, I guess, passionate about some of the stuff being bullshit. Running my mouth about it even more. Maybe that's the bigger part. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I don't know if I finished that thought all the way. but little dude here is also ready for me to be done. So we're just gonna wrap it up. Maybe I'll finish that story later if I didn't finish it already. It's just kind of muddy. Who the fuck even knows? Anyway, we're gonna wrap it up, and she's gonna eat. So, as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time, see ya.